Hello, everybody. This is take two for the AP Lit review today, and we'll do a little bit of an abbreviated session. I'm Susan Barber from Atlanta, Georgia. Hi, it's good to be with you today. And with me, my dog left. He grew impatient, but guess who did not leave? Mr. Escobar. How you doing today?
Pretty good, pretty good. How is everyone out there? I apologize for the technical difficulties, and we understand that you want to watch the other courses, and some of you are jumping from one video to the next. So we're going to try to go as quickly as possible without shortchanging the skill today, which is very important. A lot of you have asked us questions about, you guys keep saying that it's the pros question, and my teacher keeps telling me that, but I can't see that anywhere. If there's anyone out there, and we don't want to make any assumptions, if there's anyone out there who wants to find out the latest information, please take a picture of this, visit this website afterwards, and you're going to see all kinds of tips about the exam and information about each of the courses. So definitely stay informed, guys. We're going to begin, as always, with the homework. And last night we were looking at, once again, the interactions between Rosamond and Lydgate. And here we highlighted in yellow the different the details, different sections that speak to her, and in blue the different sections that speak to his behavior and his interactions. And we were really looking at the conflict or the clash between protagonist and antagonist. And as we've always told you, your responses might be different, your observations might be different, and that's completely appropriate, and that's what makes everything so exciting in literature. But what do we learn about these characters? Well, we know that they have different backgrounds, they have different views on how they should take care of themselves financially, and they have different views on money, right? We Now, when they come together and they clash, we start to discern who feels which way about finances. Rosie wants possessions. She wants money to spend. She says that she's always had indulgences, and one of her indulgences is she wants more indulgences, right? Whereas Lydgate wants to be independent, seemingly financially independent, and independent from his father-in-law specifically. And what do these interactions highlight in terms of the values of the society? Well, we definitely have characters who are juxtaposed in order to confront the notion of, should I try to live my best life, even if it is through other people's monies and support, or should I try to live the best life I can live without any outside influences? So you definitely have more than just issues concerning these characters, but issues concerning humanity and the way we live our lives. Again, where you go with interpretation is completely up to you, but it's got to be text based and it's got to be appropriate to the setting. And that's something that we're going to be talking about today. It has to be appropriate to the time period. And that brings us to today's lesson overview. We are going to be talking about, let me move a few things from my screen. We are going to be talking about setting, and we're going to talk about the function, and we're used to this term now, the function of setting in a narrative. And with that in mind, there's two things that we're going to think about. First, setting helps to establish mood. We know this already. And the other one is that the environment that the character inhabits provides information about that character. So if you're writing an essay on characterization, looking at the setting will inform you, especially if you pay attention to how the character, like we did with Ludi Johnson, how the character interacts with that setting. Ultimately, setting and the details associated with it not only depict the time and place, but also convey the values associated with that society. And that's something that we have seen time and time again. We want to enter a text, and by the time we exit, have an understanding of the values that are important in the world that the text inhabits.
That's exactly right, because once we start thinking about the values, then we get to these central ideas, controlling ideas, some of the bigger pictures and bigger issues that the text is dealing with. And so we think about like settings in novels, and really authors can choose to set a novel anywhere. So we want to be asking ourselves, Why did they choose this setting? I mean, it's not just like a random thing. So you think about some of these are just some books that we've used in our classes. The Handmaid's Tale, the Testaments, and it's set in this futuristic, this highly religious, restrictive setting, and that really is going to give the backdrop for these women telling their story and how they have been repressed. I think about Salvage the Bones, love this Jessamine Ward text. And this is set in the middle of Hurricane Katrina. We have this approaching storm, and here this storm really mirrors the protagonist troubled stage in life. She's lost her mom. I don't want to give too much away, but she's just has all of these like troubling and conflicting emotions, and that storm really highlights that. So now you won't be looking in question 2 at a whole novel in the setting, but the setting still can reveal values, bigger ideas, and help reinforce these controlling ideas. So let's look at let's look at this passage. Now, we've already talked about setting before, so some of this is a review. We're going to look at this passage from Bless Me, Ultima. Great novel. Ultima came to stay with us this summer. I was almost 7. So we see this narrator. He's almost 7, recalling this time that his grandmother came to stay with them. And let's see, as he starts talking about the setting, what impact that's going to have on him. When she came, the beauty of the Llano unfolded before our eyes, and the gurgling waters of the river sang to the hum of the turning earth. The magical time of childhood stood still, and the pulse of the living earth pressed its mystery into my living blood. She took my hand, and the silent magic power she possessed made made the beauty from the raw sun-baked Llano, the green river valley, and the blue bowl, which was the white sun's home. My bare feet felt the throbbing earth, and my body trembled with excitement. Time stood still, and it shared with me all that had been and all that was to come. So when I read this and when I look at this, I want to just say, what about the setting stands out to me? And why do I think it's important? What do you notice? And again, we're going to notice different things. My students just wrote a passage, they just wrote the timed writing on the Zenobia prompt. And that prompt really uses heavy setting. It has a lot of setting in it. And different things stood out to different students. So what stands out to you in this passage? And now why do you think it's important? Some of the things that stood out to me: imagery, figurative language, and then what effect the setting that had on the narrator, what effect it had. And then I want to think, what value or values is this reinforcing? So let's go back and look at this again. There we go. So I have color coded this. We look at this imagery: the raw sun-baked Llano, the green river valley, the blue bowl, which was the white sun's home, the throbbing earth, all of this imagery, specific colors. And then figurative language: the gurgling waters of the river sang to the hum of the turning earth, the pulse of the living earth pressed. And now we see how all of this setting affects the narrator. All of a sudden, when his grandmother comes, the beauty of the earth is unfolding before his eyes. Now, he had been in this setting the whole time before, but now we have this connection. Oh, his grandmother's here. Now, all of a sudden, all of this is opening up to him. Childhood It stood still for him. Like we see there's some type of shift in his character, and it's happening with the setting here. And its mystery is pressed, it's in his blood. Time stood still, his body's trembling with excitement. So, what do we make of all of this? And what do we think? What values might we see? When I start looking at this, looking at the specific imagery, looking at figurative language, and then I can see the effect that this setting, the way it's described, the way the author chooses to unpack the setting for us. We see the effect it has on Gabriel's character. Then we realize, oh, Ultima's existence, the earth was very important to her and magical to her. And it represented this part of her ancestry that he had been fighting against. And I just pulled out one paragraph. If it would have been a little longer text, you would have seen this. And now he's beginning to accept that. So we see the setting forces this shift in the character and in what he's processing. So when we think about setting, we want to see what effect does it have on the character? Is it causing some type of shift? Is it causing a change? We talked yesterday about contrast. Maybe the setting is causing this contrast that gives us some tension, and it sets up like, ooh, this is not quite right. Those are the questions we want to be asking about setting. What do you have, Mr. Escobar? Anything you
Well,
want to add to that?
yeah, as you're speaking, what I keep thinking about is it's not setting for setting's sake, right? It's
Correct.
not a very rudimentary multiple choice exam that asks what is the setting, and you're supposed to say winter, summer, fall, or Miami, or Atlanta, or Washington, or Saudi Arabia, right? It's really about how the setting will interact with a character as much as a character will interact with a setting. And it's our responsibility as careful readers to see, to examine that thin layer of interaction. And that's where the meat and potatoes are. That's where the richness of the text, I think, will manifest itself. And and I think it's moving ourselves, our students as readers, to a much deeper level, because I keep thinking to my own understanding of setting as a kid,
Mhm.
especially through elementary school, probably even through my middle school experience, and setting was certainly just a one word answer of location. Whereas here, the way that you presented it, it's really about the interaction and what emerges from that interaction. I think that if students were to set up their discussions in that way, then we're in for some amazing essays this year.
Totally agree. It's everything. And we keep coming back to this, back to function. But everything is author choice. So, why this setting? What can this setting tell us about the character? What can this setting tell us about the controlling idea? It's just another way in to look deeper and make meaning out of the text. So, let's do a check.
Absolutely. So I think it's appropriate, right, for us to go back to
It
yeah, we
all
were going to say the same thing. Yeah, it
It
all goes back
always
to
goes back
Rosie.
to
Yeah.
it always goes back to Middlemarch, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And we opened today with how we ended yesterday, which was looking at these two characters. But these two characters don't exist
Mhm.
in a vacuum, right? These two characters, their perspectives, their interactions, their behaviors, their reactions are all a product of the environment they inhabit. Rosamond and Lydgate are acting as they are acting because of where they are and because of
Mhm.
who they are. And those two things are so intertwined that we can't discern where one ends and the other begins, right? So here we have a few notes. You want to go over these?
Sure. It's interesting in the prompt that The following passage is from the novel Middlemarch by George Eliot, the pen name of Mary Ann Evans, 1819 through 1880. Now, this is actually part of the prompt the College Board is giving you. Anytime College Board gives you information like this, it's a gift, you know,
Use it.
and we need to take note of it. Why do you think that they would have us? Why would they want us to know that Marianne Evans had to write under a pen name? Now, we did talk earlier in our first setting session, we talked about that we can't necessarily always assume that the time period that the author wrote in is the setting, is the time period that this is happening in. However, when we do look at this and make this connection, we can come to the probable probable assumption that women in this time, it's not like women are today. Women were, the husband was making decisions for the family or for the spouse, and the woman just had to, in this time period, agree with that and move on. So when we look at that, and then we see these details about, have you asked him for money? No, Rosie, said Lydgate decisively. Um, I insist that your father doesn't know. I mean, this very hard line of the husband. And so we can come to this assumption that even in this setting, this time period setting, that there, while the argument is centered on money, like the real issue relies around who has control in this relationship, and gender roles of that time period do play a factor here.
Right. The details that we've highlighted here really show us that it's not a dialogue between them. She expresses a concern and he decisively says something, and he insists upon his own uh, opinion of the resolution to the situation. It's definitely tied to the time period. It's definitely tied to the interactions between men and women and between wife and husband and wife during the 19th century. It There's no way to divorce. There's a key word there maybe, to divorce time period from the conflict that these characters are having. And that's why these videos that we're doing, these lessons, are so intertwined. We're building them deliberately. We went from character to setting because um these two skills function, I think, simultaneously in a text, and we're meant to see them as such. If we consider setting, we're talking about two things. We're talking about the function of the setting itself within the narrative, but as we have seen consistently throughout this lesson, it is really about the relationship between that setting and the characters. So here are some questions for you to ask yourselves every single time that you uh, are reading a text and having to think about setting and character. I think that we if you look at that first bullet, what is the relationship between the text setting and the other literary elements? Remember that setting can be created and will be enhanced by figurative language. And that's why Miss Barber at the beginning of this lesson said, if you're having a hard time really pinpointing the setting, look at things like imagery and figurative language, metaphor, simile, all those things will enhance your understanding of setting. And as we go down these questions, ultimately we get to the idea of the society being revealed itself because of our understanding of setting, character, and how they interplay with one another. For homework, we're not going to read it to you this time. We believe that this text is a little more or a lot more accessible, but it is a great passage, and you are going to focus on setting for this one.
There is so much to dig into here. I've never used this passage in my classroom, and Mr. Escobar brought it to my attention, and I will use it from now on. We're also going to be working with this tomorrow when we talk about symbolism, but I think you're really going to like it. I think there's so much to dig into. So we would ask that you would read this and then just think through these questions. What setting details do you think are important? What effect do these have on the character? And what values are reflected through this setting? So I know we were a little rushed today trying to finish up before 1 o'clock. So thank you for hanging with us through some tech difficulties and through a rest session. If you know someone who does not have internet access or a device, please reach out to College Board. Um, and we will be back tomorrow. We're going to be working with the White Heron Techs. Look who came and joined us for the end. Bear decided to jump on in for the end of it. So we will see y'all tomorrow. We'll catch our breath. We'll not be quite as rushed. As always, seniors, we love you. It's great to spend this time with you.
Take care, everyone. Goodbye.